Baik, selamat siang Bapak Ibu semua yang berada di rumah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ini untuk mengecek suara yang dari studio kami, mohon diacungkan jempolnya kalau memang terdengar dengan jelas. Bagaimana Bapak Ibu semua, terdengar jelas ya? Oke, terima kasih. Iya, selamat datang bagi semua peserta nih, partisipan yang alhamdulillah pada tahun ini untuk IKD yang ketiga itu banyak sekali, hampir 400 registran yang terbagi dalam kurang lebih sekitar 100 presenter dan yang lainnya sebagai partisipan. Bersyukur kami juga untuk tahun ini respon dari para peneliti, para penulis artikel sudah sangat cukup baik sekali, apalagi sudah kami bubuhi juga dengan bonus untuk mengikuti kegiatan workshop penulisan karya tulis ilmiah yang diselenggarakan kemarin. Baik Bapak Ibu semua, memang ini acara formalnya belum kita mulai. Ini saya hanya ingin komunikasi saja dengan Bapak Ibu semua yang berada di rumah ataupun di kantor. Karena ini dari 400 peserta itu baru sekitar 272 sekarang ya sudah masuk. Jadi tinggal menunggu beberapa orang lagi. Baik Bapak Ibu semua, seperti yang kami kemukakan kemarin bahwa untuk penyelenggaraan seminar ini kita ada aturan main yang memang harus dilakukan. Karena apa? Karena ini menyangkut masalah kredibilitas sebagai bangsa Indonesia, Bapak Ibu semua. Karena kebetulan pembicaranya itu dari luar, sehingga mereka biasanya memang tidak biasa dengan meeting Zoom seperti ini, terutama untuk kegiatan-kegiatan ilmiah seperti seminar. Mereka biasanya menggunakan jenisnya webinar yang dari semua partisipan itu tidak tampak mukanya seperti saat ini. Tapi sekarang, nah ini secara pribadi kami panitia memohon Bapak Ibu untuk mengaktifkan dulu videonya supaya kami bisa melihat siapa saja yang hadir di sini. Wah, ternyata masih wajah-wajah yang saya kenal semua, tapi banyak juga. Karena Bapak Ibu semua perlu diketahui bahwa registran yang untuk tahun ini hampir tersebar di beberapa provinsi, terutama dari Makassar, kemudian dari Malang, dari Jakarta, dari Tangerang, dan tentunya dari Bandung juga banyak sekali. Terima kasih, mohon izin saya memanggil nama yang saya kenal saja untuk mengangkat tangannya apabila saya sebutkan namanya. Mohon izin di sini ada mantan wakil rektor 1 Universitas Negeri Makassar, Pak Sofyan. Mana Pak Sofyan, bisa melambaikan tangannya Pak Sofyan? Oke, ya, banyak sekali ternyata. Dari Pak Dekannya juga, Pak Dekan Fakultas Seni dan Desain Makassar juga ini hadir sebagai presenter juga. Terima kasih atas partisipannya Bapak semua. Kemudian juga dari Tangerang, ada yang dari Tangerang? Dari Petra juga ada ya, dari Surya Pranata, kemudian dari SMA 2 Serang. Iya, dari Universitas Pasundan. Mana ada ya? Oke, terima kasih. Dari UNS juga. Trisakti juga ada nih. Maranatha juga. Wah, di banyak sekali. Tentunya juga dari para mahasiswa program pendidikan pasca sarjana Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia juga banyak sekali yang menjadi presenter pada kesempatan tahun ini. Baik Bapak Ibu semua, sebelum kita mulai, saya akan memukakan lagi bagaimana sih sebetulnya apa yang harus kita lakukan pada saat mengikuti kegiatan konferensi seminar pada siang hari ini. Mohon izin saya share screen dan untuk membacakan tentang aturan main kita. Mohon izin host untuk menampilkan share screen-nya. Iya, diklik saja share-nya. Iya, baik. Ini sebetulnya yang kemarin Bapak Ibu semua. Jadi kenapa kami buka sejak pukul 11.30 karena Bapak Ibu untuk bisa melakukan daftar hadir ya, mengisi daftar hadir yang formnya juga sudah dicantumkan di chat Zoom-nya itu. Kemudian mohon diisi karena kemarin itu dari peserta yang hadir itu tidak semua mengisi daftar hadir. Nah, mohon untuk kali ini mengisi daftar hadir karena apa? Ini menyangkut masalah nanti ke depannya kami akan cross check antara registrasi kemudian daftar hadir dan tentunya dengan pembayaran. Mohon maaf ini saya sampaikan untuk mendapatkan sertifikat atau fasilitas yang akan kami berikan kepada semua registran. Jadi mohon izin sekarang untuk melakukan pengisian daftar hadir ini. Tapi kalau yang sudah jangan mengisi lagi karena datanya jadi double nantinya. Baik, itu kemudian juga tadi mohon maaf yang sebesar-besarnya kami dari panitia. Kenapa Bapak Ibu sampai menunggu lama belum diadmit saja dari hostnya? Karena begini Bapak Ibu semuanya, perlu saya ceritakan bahwa karena banyaknya presenter, kami mengutamakan presenter dulu untuk menempatkan pada break room. Sehingga nanti memudahkan ketika acara main room-nya selesai, itu tinggal di open dan langsung Bapak Ibu semua bisa tersebar di room masing-masing. Begitu ya. Jadi mohon maaf sekali lagi kami sampaikan, bahkan tadi yang sudah di-admit juga ada yang keluar lagi karena lama sekali ini dimulainya katanya begitu. Tapi tidak apa-apa, yang paling penting sekarang Bapak Ibu semua sudah hadir kembali. Kemudian untuk profil nama sekarang sudah muncul nama-nama yang sesuai dengan registrasi sehingga Bapak Ibu bisa di-admit. Kemudian khusus untuk presenter juga sekarang sudah mencantumkan BR dan kode ruangannya. Ini terima kasih sudah dilakukan semua. Kemudian juga virtual background-nya juga meskipun masih ada beberapa partisipan yang masih menggunakan background tirai rumahnya, kemudian ada dinding rumahnya, tapi tidak apa-apa Bapak Ibu semua. Yang paling penting sekarang Bapak Ibu semua sudah hadir di sini untuk mengikuti kegiatan seminar pada siang hari ini. Kemudian selama mengikuti kegiatan mohon mute modenya terus dibiarkan saja. Karena apa? Nanti di unmute itu ketika proses diskusi atau tanya jawab kita akan selenggarakan. Jadi Bapak Ibu nanti mohon untuk raise hand dulu ketika ada pertanyaan yang hendak diajukan. Nanti moderator akan melihat tangan siapa yang ada di video Bapak Ibu semua, kemudian akan dipanggil namanya dan host akan meng-unmute speaker yang milik Bapak Ibu semua. Begitu ya. Nanti Bapak Ibu di dalam opening ceremony yang sebentar lagi kita akan lakukan, pertama kita akan menyanyikan lagu Kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Tentunya ini perlu sikap yang memang menghormati lagu kebangsaan kita. Tidak perlu berdiri Bapak Ibu semua, cukup dengan duduk sempurna. Kalau mau ikut nyanyi juga silakan. Kalau tidak juga tidak masalah. Yang paling penting adalah mensikapi lagu Kebangsaan Indonesia Raya ini. Setelah itu ada pembacaan ayat suci Al-Quran. Ini juga mohon disimak betul-betul, dikaji, didengarkan dengan seksama. Dan mohon maaf bagi agama yang memang di luar agama Islam, silakan cukup dengan mendengarkan saja. Tapi untuk yang Muslim seyogianya selain mendengarkan juga merenungkan lantunan ayat suci Al-Quran itu. Begitu ya Bapak Ibu semua. Setelah itu baru kita melaju kepada sambutan Ketua Pelaksana, kemudian ada sambutan Dekan Fakultas Pendidikan Seni dan Desain Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, dan terakhir sambutan adalah dari Rektor Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia dan sekaligus membuka acara kegiatan International Conference Art and Design Education yang ketiga. Dan setelah itu ada pembacaan doa, ini mohon diaminkan, karena doa itu kalau tidak diaminkan percuma saja. Apalagi ini diaminkan oleh 400 orang, berarti doa itu mudah-mudahan bisa mustajab dan bisa dikabulkan oleh Allah Subhanahu wa taala. Amin. Dan berikutnya setelah itu baru kita akan persembahan tari. Setelah itu main room akan diserahkan kepada moderator, kemudian main room akan berjalan sekitar kurang lebih selama 2 jam, dan setelah main room selesai baru break room akan dilakukan. Mohon untuk break room ini Bapak Ibu nanti akan muncul notifikasi ke laptop Bapak Ibu semuanya, mohon diklik join supaya Bapak Ibu bisa bergabung di break room mana Bapak Ibu bisa bergabung. Begitu Bapak Ibu semua yang ingin saya sampaikan, karena sekarang acaranya tepat pukul 1 kita akan mulai. Nah, ini saya sih sebetulnya hanya pengantar saja. Nanti yang formalnya akan disampaikan oleh MC kondang kita dengan memakai bahasa juga yang mungkin saya juga kurang begitu paham dengan bahasa Inggris. Dan saya yakin kalau Bapak Ibu semua karena ikut seminar internasional berarti Bapak Ibu semua sudah paham dengan bahasa Inggris. Bahkan yang presenter nanti coba presentasi menggunakan bahasa Inggris. Boleh bahasa Inggris yang bahasa Inggris Sumedang, bahasa Inggris Tasik, bolehlah, tidak apa-apa. Yang paling penting pakai bahasa Inggris. Begitu Bapak Ibu semua, terima kasih atas perhatiannya. Saya serahkan semuanya ke Master of Ceremony Ibu Zakia Fawitan dari Fakultas Pendidikan Seni dan Desain Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Firstly, I would like to thank to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala who has been giving us blessings and mercies so we can be here together in healthy condition. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good day to everyone and welcome to the opening ceremony of the Third International Conference on Arts and Design Education, also called IKD. I am very pleased to be here today for the opening of this IKD the third, held by FPSD UPI. Let me present myself. I am Zakia Pawitan as your master ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, for the opening, we will sing Indonesian National Anthem, Indonesia Raya, and followed by the recitation of Al-Quran by Mr. Iqbal Nurjaman.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A'udzu billahi minasy syaithanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ya ayyuhalladzina amanu idza qila lakum tafassahu fil majalis إذا قيل لكم تفسحوا في المجالس فافسحوا يفسح الله لكم وإذا قيل انشزوا فانشزوا يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات والله بما تعملون خبير صدق الله العظيم. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Dear Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, and our dear students, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We appreciate you taking time off your busy schedules to join us today. We hope you will find the program we have lined up for you to be fruitful and engaging. Now, we are opening this ceremony with the welcome marks by Head of the Organizing Committee, Dr. Philosophy, Mr. Yudi Sukmayadi.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable Rector of Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, Dean of Faculty of Arts and Design Education, honorable speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen. In this good opportunity, I'm as of the third ICADE committees would like to express my gratitude to Rector of UPI, Professor Solihuddin, and all Vice Rectors, Dean of Faculty of Arts and Design Education, Dr. Zacharias S. Suteja, and all Vice Deans and staffs for all the assist, support, participation, and cooperation in carrying out this third ICADE well. By the theme Strengthening Tolerance through Arts and Design Education, the third ICADE aims to share and exchange knowledge and practices for academicians, educators, researchers, practitioners, graduate and postgraduate students, and art entrepreneurs from different cultural backgrounds and nationality to worldwide present and exchange their recent knowledge and latest research in fields of performing arts, arts education, and the practices, as well as multidisciplinary arts field. This conference is also held as a media in establishing a partnership with an art and design institute, nationally and internationally. In this opportunity, the third ICADE is attended by nearly 100 co-presenters and 300 participants from various countries, such as Germany, Poland, Korea, USA, Mexico, and from different cities of Indonesia. The selected papers of this conference will then be published on Atlantis Press Publisher and will be indexed by Web of Science and Google Scholar. I would like to highly thank keynote speaker, Professor Dieter Mark from University of Music, Lübeck, Germany, and all invited speakers, Professor Nahon Park from Yongsan University of Busan, Korea, Dr. Christoph Lucamsey from University of Arts, Poznan, Poland, and Professor Yasrap Amir Pillian from Institut Teknologi Bandung, Indonesia. My gratitude is also addressed to all presenters and participants of the third ICADE. Kindly please accept my sincere gratitude to all members of the steering and organizing committees and all those who have contributed their untiring efforts in making this conference take place and success. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Philosophy Yudi Sukmayadi. And for another following remarks, we are pleased to welcome a speech from Dean of Faculty of Arts and Design Education, Dr. Zacharias S. Suteja, MSN.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. dear guests and member, speaker, and all participants. In this great moment of the third International Conference of Art and Design Education, or ICAD, I would like to welcome all of you who take part in this memorable conference. The third ICAD is an international conference hosted by Faculty of Art and Design Education, Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. This conference covers various topics such as music, dance, fine art, drama, theater, visual art, visual communication design, art education, film and television, and interdisciplinary of art. This conference is an annual program of Faculty of Art and Design Education, held in purpose to share and exchange the up-to-date global knowledge and practice in field of performing art, art education, and other art discipline, presented to all academicians, educators, practitioners, scholars, and postgraduate students, as well as art entrepreneurs of various cultural background and citizenship. Through this event, we will also establish our global network for future collaboration, promoting new nation, innovation, and creativity. In this great opportunity, I would like to thank and highly appreciate Rector of UP and all Vice Rector and speakers. I would also thank and highly reward author, lecturers, and graduate students, participant the ICAT committee, and all unmentioned for all support, assistance, and cooperation. Hopefully, through this conference, we can extend our mutual cooperation as well as the development of art and art education knowledge and its implementation to improve the quality of our life, make a meaningful contribution to the world community. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Zacharias S. Suteja, MSN. Now, with much honor, we would like to call upon Mr. Professor Dr. M. Solehuddin, MPD, MA, as a rector of UPI to give his speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I would like to welcome keynote speakers and invited speakers, authors, and all attending participants from various colleges and invited institutes in the third International Conference on Art and Design Education, ICADE. ICADE is one of conferences in UVI which are conducted by study programs and faculties. I welcome the third ICADE event and would really love to express my appreciation, support, and reward to those who have been taking part and give their contribution for this conference, so this conference can be served well and success without any significant trouble. Indirectly, this way has given a positive contribution to the existence and the image of UPI nationally and internationally. In addition to this conference, which is held as an assembly point of experts, observers, and audiences of art and design, this conference also stands to be a media in reinforcing the local identity that will be coloring field of science, mainly in field of arts and design education, turns them to the better direction, harmonizing them to the rhythm of industrial revolution 4.0 era and preparing to welcome society 5.0 era. UVI, through its vision leading and outstanding in field of education, always keep the commitment to push and facilitate the whole academicians to create the atmosphere of academic and to develop academic activity to embody the vision along with its mission in integrating the knowledge and skill through numbers of fields and activities individually and socially. In this opportunity, I would like to thank especially to the whole committee and VSD and FVSD Faculty of Art and Design Education for their smart work in making success this third ICADE 2020 event. May it turn to be good deeds that resulting an equal reward from our Lord. Congratulations and thanks are also addressed to all keynote speakers and all presenters that have taken part in making success this conference. May this conference be able to facilitate the aspirations of many related people, especially the community of arts and design education, to develop nation spirit, inspiring collaborative works. Besides, may this conference also be benefit to the knowledge and skill development in field of art and design education. Finally, to all presenters and participants, I would like to say, please enjoy the third International Conference on Art and Design Education, ICADE 2020. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Professor Dr. M. Solehuddin, MPD, MA. And thank you for everyone who came up giving their aspiring speech and sharing their words of wisdom to us. The following ceremony, let us bow down our heads, put ourselves in presence of God to pray for smoothness of the today's program that led by Dr. Edi Suresman, MAG.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Excuse me, all participants, keynote speaker, and other audience. I pray with Islamic methods. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Hamda yuafi ni'amahu wa yukafi mazidah. Ya Rabbana lakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhikal karim wa azimi sultanik. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Ya Allah, ya Fatah, our God, our praise for you. Thank you. You bless us today. We can meet in International Conference on Art and Design Education 2020. Ya Allah, Ya Alim, we have this seminar as science facilities meaningful to improve achievement and innovation for our institution. Ya Allah, Ya Hadi, give us guidance and directing to do this seminar goodness and truthfully for leading and outstanding our university today and next period. Ya Allah, only for you our dedication and us helping. Give us sacrifice for our duty and assignment as educator, scientist, or another profession for dedication only you. Ya Allah, Ya Rabbana, this seminar is meaningful for us, most important for a reason, brotherhood, faculty, science, art, and science, family, and to improve our competencies in our profession. In that case, improve Rahman and Rahim for us, for education in our country and globalization area. Ya Allah, Ya Azizul Jabbar, give us brotherhood and power unities to become good relation and integrated. Ya Allah, Ya Ghaffar, forgive our sin, our parent, our leader, receive our asking. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim wa tub alaina innaka antat tawwabur rahim. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wassalamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wal afu minkum. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Edi Suresman, MAG. To close the opening ceremony, let us watch a dance performance put up by students of Dance Education Department. That's a very powerful dance performance from Dance Education Department. Now we are nearing to the end and awaited part of today's opening. Thank you for your kind cooperations and attentions. So let's give the ball to Professor Juju Masunah M. Hum, PhD, as our today's moderator.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome our distinguished speakers, Professor Dietermark from Lübeck, Germany, Professor Nahon Park from Busan, Korea, Professor Dr. Yasrap Amir Pillian from Bandung, Indonesia, and Dr. Christoph Lucamsey from Poland. I will be a moderator in this afternoon. All the IKD presenters and participants, I would like to introduce Professor Dietermark as the first keynote speakers in IKD. Professor Dietermark is a composer and ethnomusicologist. He was a professor for music theory at the Musikhochschule Freiburg in 1986 and a Balinese gamelan ensemble founder at Musikhochschule Freiburg, Germany. He becomes a professor for composition at the Musikhochschule Lübeck, Germany since 2003. He was a long-term visiting professor in the Department of Music Education in IKIP Bandung from 1992 until 1995. And he joined the National Committee for Curriculum Planning 1994. He continued as a short-term visiting professor in UPI in the following years and the consultant of the long-term research project about documentation of traditional music culture and developing of teaching model of traditional art in Indonesia, funded by the Ford Foundation until 2005. He continued as a consultant for PhD study program in art education in UPI. Also, he was a visiting professor and guest lecturer in many universities around the world. As a composer, he wrote more than 100 scores. All scores are published by Baron Reiter Kessel or Verlag Neue Musik Berlin. We are proud of Professor Dietermark, and we would like to invite your presentation, Strengthening Tolerance Through Art Education and Design Education. Time is yours.
Okay, I think now it's possible that I can speak because the microphone has been closed. Do you hear me? Good. Yeah, thank you very much, Ibu Dudu, for giving me this possibility. Sebenarnya saya bisa pakai bahasa Indonesia karena kebanyakan orang Indonesia di sini, tapi saya diminta dalam bahasa Inggris, ya silakan aja. Tapi di sini masih pagi, tadi dibilang good afternoon, di sini masih selamat pagi di negara saya, dan agak dingin, tapi saya coba melaksanakan makalah saya. Okay, yeah, please allow me that my focus in my paper will be on music education because this is my main field of work. However, in a first step, I will put my thoughts in a more general context of current social debates, which seems to be a necessary prerequisite to understand my further arguments. My presentation is divided in 4 parts. The first, identity and tolerance in the time of hyperculture and cultural essentialism. Second, about human coordinate systems and tolerance. Third, when does music matter and how? And four, strengthening tolerance through music education. Let's start with number one, identity and tolerance in the time of hyperculture and cultural essentialism. Already in 2005, the German philosopher Harry Lehmann published a remarkable article with the title Globalization and the Freedom of Arts. The author tries to define globalization as an inevitable historical process and dwelt on the importance of the development of functional systems or communities without borders. In other words, globalization has less to do with the change of territorial borders, but rather with the exponentially growing development of interest groups and communities. He called them the hidden agents of globalization. And he comes to an interesting conclusion, quote, during the last time we could recognize a kind of flashback towards one's own local region. This is no anti-movement to globalization, but its complementary side effect, end of the quote. Lehmann argues positively that the new global societies penetrate each other, and he argues negatively because regional or local resources could be exploited in a more efficient way by those global players, or as he called them, the hidden agents. Therefore, at the same time, that local flashback mentioned above is a necessary supplementary counterforce in the sense of self-preservation. Recently, the sociologist Andreas Reckwitz has put it in a more polarizing, though also threatening way, when he talks about the current cultural conflicts that are less than the fights between cultural realms a la Samuel Huntington. He reveals two rather opposing attitudes in dealing with culture itself. For him, there's a so-called hyperculture on one side, which fosters individualistic self-development and self-realization based on a high degree of diversity regarding any global markets. On the other side, he speaks of a cultural essentialism as a medium for creative collective identities of communities. These communities are less related to locations, but rather based on defined limiting ideologies, whether philosophical, religious, or economic ones. According to my opinion, both opinions should be slightly extended. It seems to be completely utopian to believe that the human being of today is suited for a world society that increasingly permeates and interconnects with each other, although mostly on virtual platforms. Apparently, there is a genuine interest, if not urgent need, for the local terrain. It has to do with personal identification or identity, which conveys stability and life security. Especially because of mostly alienated working situations, the search for orientation, fixed points of orientation, and a kind of counseling in the sense of balancing seem to gain a new importance. If one continues such thoughts, one might perhaps touch certain fundamental fears that humankind has tried to conquer since its beginnings. Therefore, it might be surprising that in an area of rationalization and scientific explanations, speculative life ideologies or religions of any kind have a surprising success and intake. Some years ago, I received the news that some American states tried to implement a new legislation that the term evolution should be banned from school books. This is less surprising, though absurd and frightening at the same time. For many people, identity is not only assured by a strong self-consciousness, but also via a dialectic polarization of the self towards one's own environment, unfortunately including various enemy images. Only by the latter, many people are able to accept their own self. Also for me, such a method is nothing more like a self-triggered pastoral fata morgana that automatically impedes or at least reduces tolerance. Once again, it does not need Samuel Huntington's clash of cultures. The whole system of human coordinate systems or systems of values has become into a unique disorder. Therefore, it seems to be less important when a well-known global power wants to impose its fatal ideology with messianic zeal and cunning mendacity. But it's equal less important if a bunch of wrong-led suicides still praise the accidental deaths of even own family members and declare them as all as martyrs on the way to a heavenly paradise or whatever. Such perfidies are not measurable anymore, but in a frightening way, they mark our everyday life, although there are much more important things to do and to take care of, because they have to do with the future of all humankind and not only a few people. In other words, Reckwit's idea of cultural essentialism, and this is the background of these two examples, seems typical for areas with a certain disorder, but cannot really help to solve the problems. COVID-19, at least, could be regarded as a regulative to rethink about who we really are, how we need each other, and how tolerance is perhaps the starting point for any kind of communication, the real as well as the virtual one, between communities of that cultural essentialism or between individuals of Reckwit's so-called hyperculture. Second part, about human coordinate systems and tolerance. The arts, as well as an expression or even mirror of society processes, have to deal with such crude thoughts, although we would have to add individualism to globalization and regionalism, the local. This is the reason that I also mentioned the opinion of Reckwitz. It includes individuality in both the hyperculture as well as the cultural essentialism. While in the first, it tends to a typical late anything goes postmodernism, in the second, the individual subordinates himself or herself to a certain ideology. However, exactly here it becomes difficult because the existing points of orientation as a parametrical destination seems to vanish increasingly. Lehmann calls these points of orientation Archimedic points, in a kind of analogy to that famous saying of Archimedes. They are essential for life orientation of most humans, and the lack of them, now getting back to arts, represents a significant feature of postmodernism. By that, and with the words of Lehmann, the central feature of arts, the subject-object relation, vanishes. Consequently, it would be the end of the artist and the artwork as well. But at the same time, we would face the highest degree of mutual tolerance. Art education could be reduced to any kind of creative activity, and the doing, the action itself, is more important than the result. Or the other way around, through this kind of anarchic and open sound production, I can hardly call it art then, we could experience tolerance as a kind of anything goes, as long as the own activity does not interfere with those from others. A paradise-like situation? I strongly doubt it. Let us now step away from this utopia. I would like to propose another model like the one from Lehmann, or at least I would like to extend it again. In fact, later in his article, Lehmann dismisses postmodern anything goes mentality completely. For him, an artistic decision is always depending dialectically on those points of reference and therefore correlates with the common notion of the need of such systems for the respective societies or communities as well. One may even ask whether in art music has ever existed a kind of postmodern attitude without coordinate systems. Serious artists will always newly create their coordinate systems. The negative notion in postmodernism should then be based on another argument, which is the lack of critical self-reflection on the search of one's own coordinate systems. However, if we talk about those coordinate systems as something trans-individual, then its lack might really be something essential. Nevertheless, there are other positions, like, for example, that from Jonathan D. Kramer, who insists that there are certainly certain coordinate systems in postmodernism. According to Kramer, all coordinate systems are systematically questioned, but never denied. Therefore, postmodernism has never been a stylistic epoch, but rather an attitude. And here I would completely agree, because this is a basic prerequisite in arts and a strong argument as well why a broad palette of art education may support the notion of tolerance in an educational situation. However, we all know how extremely far, especially today's music education, is away from those goals. When will educators learn that knowledge of facts has nothing to do with art education? It even impedes the development of tolerance. That tiny glimpse of knowledge that can be taught in a school situation is so limited. If a pupil automatically takes it as pars pro toto, we have just started to implant the seed of intolerance. As a first summary, we can say that we face a dilemma if we try to bring art and society together. If we regard the human desire for those archimedes points of orientation, whether in art, everyday life, or whatever, then it is quite counterproductive in today's global world. The degree of acceptance of the other or the alien will disappear in favor of the own self-preservation. The ideal of an open or flexible coordinate system or the non-existence of it at all will remain utopian. Here, I still miss a comprehensive answer from Andreas Reckwitz, because coordinate systems or Archimedes points are typical for communities of cultural essentialism, but it also happens with individuals of the hyperculture. I think the last month have given us some good examples during the Corona crisis. The more we became aware that we really do not know what the cause is or what the remedy is, what the best behavior would be, etc., the more spiritual theories of any kind became popular. New communities in the sense of Reckwitz's cultural essentialism with strict Archimedes points develop. And as real human communication has been interrupted temporarily, social platforms have replaced it. The virtual became reality. People are frightened that they do not receive precise arguments, even if they would be wrong. But they need their remedy, their coordinate system of understanding. The simple answer that there is currently something that we really cannot explain for a while makes people anxious. Even religion or its representatives can hardly give satisfying answers, except some extremists who certainly accuse always the other party of being responsible for it. The peak of religiously motivated irrationalism was the following, and this was pure reality in last March. A vice minister of a Southeast Asian country announced in public, COVID-19 is only a disease for people with the wrong belief. And if you have the right one, nothing will happen to you. Here I would like to get back to my own approach in that big ocean of opinions and ideologies. I'm convinced that the ability to make artistic decisions must not necessarily be related or being based on points of reference, without falling into the trap of a postmodern aesthetic of indifference. By that, I strongly support the idea of Reckwitz's hyperculture and its implicit plural and tolerant individualism. One may refer to a so-called koan in Japanese Zen Buddhism. A koan is a special problem which, because of its implicit contradiction, cannot be grasped rationally. Only an encompassing occupation with it may ultimately lead to a kind of transcending which goes beyond that contradiction. But it can only be experienced individually. It can be easily compared with artistic decision processes, far away from traditional dialectic processes, and certainly also far away from postmodern dissolution tendencies of any kind. A statement by French symbolist Stéphane Mallarmé has always been my guideline in this regard. Quote, I have created my work only by elimination, and each truth that I have gained has been coming out of the loss of an impression that has destroyed itself in the very moment of its appearance, and which, because of the freed darkness, allowed me to get deeper into the feeling of the absolute darkness. End of the quote. That quote, that can hardly be accused of being written with a postmodern attitude, also fosters the lack of Archimedes points without losing orientation or falling into the trap of total subjectivity, as Lehmann would name it. Especially that last term by Lehmann seems to be questionable. For Lehmann, it implies the complete lack of criteria and therefore the lack of freedom for a decision in the cauldron of arbitrariness. However, I think that term total subjectivity can be seen the other way around as well. It is the radical demand for self-responsibility, which develops only out of the thing itself. Like with Mallarmé, who had to give up himself, raising up to experience a new kind of objectivity through radical subjectivity during an artistic process. Such a process cannot be foreseen. One has always to jump into the black hole or the cold water, knowing that it's only oneself who experiences it and who has to carry all related consequences. Let me finish this more abstract section on artistic responsibility with a second summary. We have seen that individual freedom on the one side, hyperculture, and total integration into a coordinate system of a community, cultural essentialism, both extremes tend to impede openness or tolerance. It is clear and essential for the second type. Completely individual freedom potentially also lacks self-responsibility. Individual freedom can only go so far as the freedom of others is not touched or limited. Here, tolerance is the crucial term. We can cultivate such kind of tolerance in learning to make artistic decision with a full self-responsibility. The total integration into coordinate system, the cultural essentialism, as a response to the fear of the cauldron of this world, is understandable. But self-responsibility is often put aside in favor of mostly obscure ideology. People give their lives and souls and thoughts mostly into the hand of populists, ideologists, and charlatans. The danger is implicit in any of the world's religions. We know that religion itself is primarily a tool to seemingly understand the non-understandable. In its best, it accepts plurality. Many years ago, a Balinese priest asked how me, a Western Christian, because he could not think otherwise, could pray in their temple during a ceremony. Before I answered, he gave the answer himself, saying, "Oh, sorry, this was a stupid question. If there is something beyond us, it is the same for all. We just name it differently." I think this was a very wise comment, which I would love to hear more from clerics of any other religion. Part 3. When does music matter and how? Before I step into the final discussion of strengthening tolerance through music education, I would like to formulate some statement-like points on the functions and contexts of music regarding tolerance. Undeniably, music matters. How far is this due to cultural immanent criteria, and how far it is more transcultural or global? I might not be able to give a comprehensive answer to that, but it is a first attempt in the realm of an almost limitless topic. Let me make some statements and partly answer the implicit questions. Number 1, music is an integral part of any ethnic group in the world. For religious purposes in the widest sense of its meaning, as well as for social purposes of identity and even for social welfare. To my knowledge, there is no ethnic group that completely denies any kind of organized sound in its culture. Which sound can trigger special behaviors, as for example, trance, etc. This is culturally immanent and cannot be detected in the music matter itself. Accepting this diversity is already an important step to tolerance. Second, it is the opposite with national anthems. Every nation has its national anthem as a symbol of identity. However, most national anthems sound quite the same. They use almost the same music matter, a few exceptions included. Only the respective language, the text, and some potential local references are different. Is it the music that matters here, or is it the historically grown determination and the ceremonial sermon around it? Perhaps it's a bit of both, because an anthem shall trigger collective behavior or consciousness, but it's not a sign of tolerance. Third, Music has become a part of our everyday environment, especially in an urban context. Is there still a quiet place? Where can we still digest the sounds of silence? Music blurs in shopping malls, and not only one music for the whole building. Every shop seems to have its own PA with music that should stimulate the respective group of preferred buyers. Music sounds in a restaurant or a bar. So if we speak about pollution of our environment as one of our main global concerns, we also should, with a few exceptions, start to talk about pollution through music that tends to lose the original semantic destination. Here, the term tolerance seems to receive a different meaning. Should we really tolerate that kind of sound pollution of our environment? Perhaps we have to, but it must be clear that especially such functional music tends to impede tolerance because of the implicit conditioning process. Fourth, related to point 3, we face a completely new situation of conditioning through sound. Sometimes one feels like a white mouse in a glass box of a laboratory, and virtual scientists are waiting how one reacts to various stimuli. You certainly have heard the term muzak, which is functionally produced music that should influence your shopping behavior. Apparently, musical matter also matters, at least seen from an economic standpoint and less regarding tolerance. Fifth, earplugs. Beside the potential danger that one can hardly recognize real sounds in one's changing environment, we do not yet know enough about the physical damage by continuous exposure to music via earplugs. I do not want to be too negative, but the ongoing exposure of the cochlea and its cells on the basilar membrane can cause serious damage, but damage that develops almost unnoticed until it's too late. Do not forget, most music that people hear, they don't listen to, is on a single dynamic level and mostly focuses on a steady beat. My question is, to which degree our acoustic sensibility and differentiation will increasingly vanish because of such a continuous exposure? Are we still able to listen to the variations of the wind in the mountains, or to a piece like Morten Feldman's King of Denmark? Are we still able to be tolerant to diversity? 6, the healing effect of music has become an increasing field of interest in science, which sounds promising for me, but we are still in the beginnings of this new scientific branch, not to speak about thousands of dubious esoteric music therapies, which I cannot mention here. 7th, the educational effect of music making. Arts are increasingly disappearing from public schools' curricula. Especially music, if it is taught at all, has become either a torture because of memorizing theory, or it is a healthy, relaxing break to compensate the mental burdens of other subjects like language and natural sciences. I know this happened also 40 or 50 years ago, or even earlier, but today it seems much more evident, at least in my country. It is nothing new to say that music may have a relaxing element, and I would agree, why not? If at the same time creativity and social sensibility are growing, I strongly support that kind of relaxing function. To create sound occupies parts of the brain that would degenerate if these parts are not continuously drained. And as a side effect, social competence, tolerance, may grow, but therefore it needs a high degree of diversity of music matter. I remember a good statement that I have already quoted various times by the author Jurek Becker already in 1995 in the German magazine Der Spiegel, that indirectly refers exactly to that problem of tolerance, responsibility, and diversity. Quote, to listen to pop music the whole day, as many people do, or to operetta, as one of my female neighbors does, is something like to avoid intentionally fantasy. However, fantasy is probably an important prerequisite to get along with one's life in a balanced way. Therefore, the continuous output of music seems to be as well something irresponsible, as if we want to calm down the listeners like inhabitants of a hospital for mentally sick people, as if it would be something desirable to keep them in a state of non-thinking in an atmosphere of dumbness. It is not so much the problem that the people lack helping tools for orientation. It's much more serious that our own ability to find our own orientations becomes stunted. End of the quote. Music matters a lot, and different situations tell us how musical material may influence human beings, including regarding tolerance. Last part, number 4, strengthening tolerance through music education. What can art education achieve to support or strengthen the urgently needed tolerance? To give a comprehensive answer here on the background mentioned above, I see mainly 2 points regarding the field of music. First, strengthening tolerance through music practice when playing together. Second, strengthening tolerance through intercultural music education. Before I will comment on both topics, I have to admit that from my point of view, all efforts regarding strengthening tolerance via the medium music will completely fail if some essential prerequisites are not fulfilled. Many people still believe that the main body of music education in public school is A, learning historical data about composers and their works, B, learning about notation of music, and C, singing some songs, in many countries politically motivated. Despite the disappointing fact that these 3 viruses of music education are still quite common practice, I hope that we all agree that music education has to be based on completely different fundamentals. And I could at least agree with the 3rd point because it includes a practical activity. But as already mentioned, the background is mostly not a musical, but a political one. And we all know it quite well here in Indonesia with the so-called Lagu Wajib. As I have written various articles on that topic since 1992, I do not want to repeat myself here. How could we describe then what music education is? It is in the first place the effort to develop the listening abilities of a pupil. Developing means to enable a person to listen more differentiated to any kind of music and giving him or her some tools to learn, or better to understand, musical languages. The famous saying in music psychology is still, you only hear what you know. It means that in a new piece of music, our brain always selects or prioritizes those elements that sound familiar. We also hear everything else, but we mostly do not recognize or understand it. Or we put it on the secondary, if not ternary level of perception. Such learning processes for our brain do not take place via the above mentioned data, but rather by the own musical practice and listening experience. Edwin E. Gordon's term audiation is still in high demand, although his concept has already been extended and partly relativized. But the basic assumption is still valid. First, strengthening tolerance through music practice when playing together. I would like to start with a very simple example. Musical practice with more than one person is already the starting point for strengthening tolerance. It even does not need any knowledge of an instrument nor of a notation. It can be practiced on an improvisational level. Good improvisation, even as a duo, asks for taking care of the intentions of one's partner. It means that in the learning process, we can start with simple exercises, just using the human voice. Player A suggests something and player B starts to react to it. Reacting can happen in various ways, from joining in until rejecting completely. Between both extremes, there are lots of sub-steps and variations. If the pupils still have difficulties to create organized sound as the very first step, the teacher may suggest some motifs, phrases, or sounds. In most cases, a kind of dialogue will appear soon. It also may happen that one person wants to be prominent and the other just accompanies. A teacher should prepare an encompassing repertoire of possibilities and situations. Nothing must be longer than a minute. And after each attempt, an evaluation must take place with the players as well as the whole class who was listening. My experience is that the very beginning is always the hardest, and the teacher must be prepared for that. Sooner or later, the pupils will get into it. It is also important that the starting musical elements do not refer to a certain defined musical language. So-called rules may develop automatically during the musical practice. Step by step, this process may include bigger groups, but not more than 5 or 6 persons. In a further step, the same games may be done with simple percussion instruments or whatever is available. It is always essential that the role playing in a group is intensively discussed. By that, tolerating something that is done by someone else and reacting to it reveals a new consciousness about otherness, responsibility, and mutual acceptance. Second, strengthening tolerance through intercultural music education. While the first category is also helpful to learn about sound and other musical parameters, including the meaning and function in a context, the second category here has more to do with the consciousness of different cultural identities. It already takes place on that individual level if we would apply the term culture to individual behavior as well. See the term hyperculture in the first part of my talk. The question where the intercultural starts is not easy. In a country like Indonesia, the whole nation is signified by a high degree of interculturality. Take a Balinese, a Sundanese, and a Batak, just to name 3 cultural realms, and the differences are more significant than between a German, a French, and a British. Especially for Indonesians, it is a basic characteristic of the nation to achieve unity in diversity. This is an ongoing process that will never end. And here I would like again to recall the beginning of my presentation when I spoke about the mutual dependency of the global and the local. And we also know how difficult it is to be constantly tolerant regarding different social behaviors, religious and social status. Musical experience may be a helping tool to ease ethnic tensions of any kind. It may also be a helping tool to accept the otherness, but also to learn from it. This assumption is based on the strong belief that music is always a medium that transports cultural identity and cultural memory on various levels. I must admit that looking back on my now 66 years, I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to experience diversity in an encompassing way. It has enriched my life, giving me new stimulations, and has helped me to see my own culture from outside. I think this was and still is a very healthy experience, though not always a pleasing one. Thank you for your attention.
Terima kasih, Pak Dieter. Thank you very much for your presentation. Terima kasih, Pak Dieter. Thank you very much for your presentation. We learned a lot about today's situation that we fight between hyperculture and cultural essentialism. Very interesting topic, and we offer if you and participant has question, please raise hand. I think no participant raise hand. Okay, well, we would like to thank you in advance. We really appreciate your presentation. Pak Dieter, selamat pagi. Hari ini pasti di sana pagi. Kalau di sini sore. We hopefully meet you in Indonesia soon. Give applause for Professor Mark.
Thank you.
Dear presenters and participants, we would like to introduce our production committee for this IKADE conference. It's led by Nala Nandana, MA, in the Faculty of Art and Design Education. The next, our distinguished speaker is Professor Nahon Park. Please allow me to introduce Professor Nahon Park, short CP. Nahon Park got PhD degree in interdisciplinary program performing arts in Sungkyuan University, South Korea. He was a lecturer in Kukmik University, Sungkyuan University, Dong-a University, Sejong University in Korea until 2017. In 2018, Nahon Park has become a professor in Yangsan University Act and Performing Arts Department in Busan, South Korea. He is also guest professor in Department of Dance Education at UP. Also, Professor Nahon Park is the director and choreographer. He was selected a new and powerful artist by Art Council Korea in 2003, the best choreographer in 2004, in 2007 selected as a piece of work superiority 3 years in the third performing art market in Seoul. He performed his choreography in China, Japan, Singapore, Brazil, Russia, Germany, Indonesia, and Thailand. We would like to invite Professor Nahon Park to present the paper with the title Study for Performing Arts in the Fourth Industrial Revolution and Post-Corona Era, focusing on Zoom generation. Time is yours, Professor Nahon.
Thank you, thank you. I guess, can you hear me? Right? All right, thank you.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, from now on, I'm going to give a presentation. So first of all, I need to share the PPT first. Just a minute. Oh, sorry. Could you make me share my PPT, Professor Juju? I need to share my PPT. Juju, you have to make me allow to, yeah.
Yana, PPT, PPT-nya, PowerPoint-nya. Okay.
Can I try now? Okay. Oh, super. Okay, just minutes, guys. No, not this one. Sorry. Just a minute. Okay. No. Just a minute. Oh, I couldn't find. Just a minute, guys. Sorry for that. Okay. Oh. I need to figure it out. Sorry. Hey, Professor Juju, did you hear me? Can you hear me? So I need to figure it out. So I need to find my PPT. So could you pass the other professor first? Is it okay?
Next professor and next presentation?
Yeah. Could you? Because I need to figure it out. I need to find my PowerPoint first. That's why. Can I pass the? Can I give a presentation later? It's okay.
Yes, yes, Professor Nahon.
Yeah,
I will
sorry for
invite
that.
the third presenter. Hadirin sekalian, we would like to apologize that Professor Nahon is still prepared for a presentation, and we would like to invite the third distinguished speaker is Professor Dr. Yasrap Amir Pillian, MA. Let me to introduce Professor Yasrap Amir Pillian, short CV. Professor Yasrap Amir Pillian got his master's degree from Central Science Martin College of Art and Design in London, and a PhD degree from Institute Teknologi Bandung in 2007. In 2015, he got a professorship in the field of design and culture, and he was a leader of Department of Design in the Institut Teknologi Nasional (ITENAS) in Bandung in 2000 until 2006. Since 1986, he has become a professor in Graduate Study Program of Art and Design, Institut Teknologi Bandung. He was a jury of some competition and awards such as Culture Award in the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, Republic of Indonesia, and Design Award with Java Province. He wrote some books. One of the books is Hypermoralities, Mengadili Bayang-Bayang, penerbit Belukar Budaya Yogyakarta in 2003. Now we would like to invite Professor Yasrap to present the paper with the title Art and Design Education in the Intolerant Society, the Future Challenge and Strategies. Time is yours, Professor Yasrap.
Right, thank you very much for the opportunity for me to present, to give a material in this conference, and also for for Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia that allow me to to be a part of this conference, and also to be participant in this I think very important discussion about these topics. Let me share my material first. I hope no problem in this, my material. Can you see my PPT? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. The topic that I would like to share with you in this conference is about art and design education in an tolerant society. I use this term tolerantized because Indonesian society or Indonesian culture in general, basically a tolerant society. But in its development, because of too much or so strong the political power in shaping the Indonesian culture and society, that today we experience a kind of a new intolerant society of Indonesia. So I think my paper or my presentation is more focused in how tolerant to see tolerance in the context of Indonesian culture and how it will be developed in today's society of Indonesia. So first of all, I have to see the what we call as cultural roots of tolerance. I mean that, as I said before, Indonesian society is basically a tolerant society, but because of today, over the determination of politics in shaping our society, and today we are become more intolerant. So let me first trying to see what is the roots of tolerance in the Indonesian culture in general. I mean that if we talk about tolerance in the context of Indonesia or other countries that that has a similar situation with Indonesia, so it's about tolerance in the context of plural society of Indonesia cannot be separated from the related issues about pluralism, multiculturalism, political reformation, and the process of democratization in Indonesia. Because since process of political reformation in 1998, the issue about tolerance in its ethnic, racial, and religious context has become a central issue in everyday social life as the cultural effect of political reformation. So that we have in terms of this concept, at least the range of perspective reflected in this discourses about tolerance were dominated by at least three main issues: inter-religious relations, inter-ethnic relation, and inter-racial relation. So I mean that if we talk about tolerance in Indonesia, we have to talk about at least these three main issues. The first issue is about, as remarked also by Pak Dieter before, that is Indonesia is a plural and also a multicultural society. So it is quite important, I think, to really understand what plurality and what is multiculturality means in the context of Indonesian society. So I think I try to make some kind of a new interpretation about what is unity in diversity in Indonesian is Bhinneka Tunggal Ika as a national motto of our plural society. But I try to look at this term, this motto, in terms of new interpretation. I mean that when we talk about nation of Indonesia as a container, we talk about unity. Unity means that a condition of the unity or oneness of elements of the nation that manifested through various symbols of unity, flag, national symbol, national anthem. Pak Mark also talked before about national anthem. So if we talk about unity, we can have one identity of what we call as Indonesia. But when we talk about nation as the content of the container, we talk about unicity, as remarked by Jean Lucamsey. There is an assemblage of different or plural elements which cannot be expressed through a single concept whatsoever. Here, national identity as different and plural elements themselves. I mean that the identity is pluralism itself, not a single concept that we can use to talk about a plural society. Indonesian culture, we call it, you know, what is Indonesian identity? The Indonesian identity is the top of local culture, puncak-puncak kebudayaan daerah. So this is what, you know, my interpretation about what we call as a unity in diversity as a basic identity of Indonesian society and culture. And I think I try also to you know, to explore some basic ideas or some basic belief in terms of Indonesian culture, that that the belief is the basic foundation of what we call as a tolerant society. One of these principles, what we call as a gotong royong. Gotong royong is a communal work. It's a fundamental cultural value, which is also a manifestation of worldview of Indonesia. It is the mobilization of human power without payment for a certain project of work that have public benefits. It is not only a physical tendency of work together, but a way of life in a decent society organized in the model of paguyuban or Gemeinschaft. So I think the gotong royong is also one of the fundamental idea of our national ideology, Pancasila, because the cultural basis of gotong royong is the principle of life without pamrih, life without personal interest or personal profits. That is a work without any expectation of personal profits, reward or benefit to perform a kind of harmonious life. We can see, you know, how people in Sulawesi or Kalimantan build, you know, a house together without any intention, any personal profit or any personal interest in this communal work, in this kind of communal work. So I mean, it's not only in Makassar, not only in Kalimantan, but also in several regions of Indonesia. We can see, for example, the manifestation of the value of communal work of gotong royong. In Bali, for example, gotong royong is manifested in the principle of subak. That is a traditional institution in managing the watering system of rice field, so that water can be collectively utilized. In West Java, it is manifested in collective house building. In Dayak tribal, it is we can see in the clearing of the forest. In Minangkabau tradition, it is manifested in the aphorism bare samo di pikul dengan samo di jinjang, means that let's carry heavy thing together on our shoulder. Let's carry light thing together by our hands. I think this is a very clear manifestation of the spirit of togetherness and tolerance. So we can see that in several places in Indonesia, the ideas about tolerance, tolerant society can be seen very clearly. In Manado, for example, there is a local wisdoms related to tolerance with aphorism, Torang semua bersaudara, all of us are brothers, which contain moral wisdom of seeing all men, women as brothers, sisters, whose existence have to be equally recognized as a human being. So I think until today, this aphorism still in use in some part of Manado. Here, religious, ethnic, and racial differences are not an obstacle in disseminating this positive value through which an harmonious and peaceful society can be structurally built. It is a moral principle that emphasizes process rather than end result, through which tolerance is seen as a never-ending process that has to be incessantly renewed and rebuilt. So I think another example of how the principle of tolerance has its roots in various cultural places in Indonesia. We can also think about another local wisdom from Ambon, Pelagandong, which is a social bond beyond religious or ethnic border. It is based on verbal or written agreements through which both parties promise to submit the consensus as a legal standing in the future social encounter. Yet, as I said before, strong political intervention into the everyday life of the Ambonis, not only for the people in Ambon, but also strong political intervention can also be seen in other places like Makassar, like Poso, etc. In Ambon particularly, it is a horizontal ethnic religious conflict in 1999 until 2000 has made Pelagandong has a strong local wisdom sealed by the strong political energies controlling the peaceful Ambonis. So I think in terms of Indonesia, the role of political power in shaping and changing what we call as a tolerant society is quite important to be discussed here. We can also in art expression, for example, wayang, this spirit of tolerance can also be identified in the performing art of wayang, traditional Japanese puppets. In this kind of art, the role of what is called Wali Songo, the ninth spiritual guardian, particularly Sunan Kalijaga, is highly central in designing new ideas of wayang. He tried to harmoniously combine elements of Islamic doctrine with some noble values of Japanese culture. Tolerance was regarded as an important part of the cultural strategy of wayang. I think not only in wayang, but also batik and other art expression in Java to strengthen the social bond and brotherhood among plural Japanese society by adopting the Hindu-Buddha tradition incorporated with some Islamic doctrine. I think that not only Javanese wayang, but also Sundanese wayang. We can see clearly how the founder of wayang has an ideas about what we call today as a tolerance. We can also see in West Sumatra, Minangkabau ethnic. We can see a lot of philosophy about tolerance, and one of them is Bima Bumi Dipijak, di Senan Langit Dijunjung. It means where the earth is trampled, where the sky is upheld. The Minangkabau philosophy of merantau or immigration is not to dominate the new land, as in the Western colonial concept of new found land, new frontier, or utopia as a new found territory. The proverb, where the earth is trampled, where the sky is upheld, means that the new land is not a sized land, but a temporary place for self-development, where the local culture and custom are inclusively respected. It is a culture that highly respects other in terms of differences and pluralism. You can see that the Minangkabau people is quite famous with rumah makan, rumah makan Padang. And we can see everywhere in Indonesia, even in New York, we can see rendang, rumah makan Padang. And wherever they go, they try to respect other in terms of differences and pluralism. It means that Minangkabau people is highly, respect for tolerance. The second part of my presentation is about theoretical framework. I think Prof. Mark also, speak about some basic theoretical basis of what we call as a tolerance. I try to my part to talk about the same theoretical basis. The first one is about pluralism. I mean that tolerance is a central concept in discussion about pluralism. It means that tolerance can be seen as a precondition for the possibility of pluralism. One can only be a pluralist if he or she is committed to tolerance. The central idea of pluralism is the idea that there are many claims of moral which has its own truth. But we can only express pluralism through toleration. We should tolerate difference, not a closed difference, but an open difference, which is open for critical discourse in order to renew our understanding of the good and the true. So it is the differences between plurality and pluralism, because in pluralism we have to have a kind of openness for a critical discourse. One of the best reasons to be tolerant then is that it allows us to work together, whether what we are doing is really one of the plurality of good. I think this is the basic concept about pluralism. But in terms of Indonesia, we can also talk about another concept, which is multiculturalism. Multiculturalism can be described as a tendency toward recognition for the distancelessness among different cultures beyond national, religious, ethnic, or racial borders. It connotes a paradigm of constructing interdependence of cultural identities originates from two or more nationalities, which is seen transnational in their character. Transnational, it means that the sum of culture in Indonesia came from another country, another religious basis, etc. In a more restricted dimension, multiculturalism is defined as a specific problem related to relation among different races in a state with a majority of its population is white people and other are minorities. So I think the problem of majority and minority, we can also this kind of problem in Indonesia as well, because the majority of the population of Indonesia is Japanese, and the other ethnic, we can say that other ethnics are a minority. So we can, in Indonesia, we have also this kind of problem about plurality in terms of the majority culture and the minority culture. So I think that multiculturalism is also a relevant concept to discuss about what Indonesian culture is. I think another concept, another important concept in discussion about tolerance is the difference. Difference is a central concept in the discourse about tolerance, both in the context of pluralism and multiculturalism. Yet, yet different is not a single unitary concept that represents a single phenomenon, but a continuously changing concept that represent kind of spectrum of differences. What we call as the politic of differences is related to the ideas that culture and identities can never be wholly separate, homogeneous entities. Instead, the interrelationship of differences are marked by translation and negotiation. The cultural politic of difference means living with incommensurability through new ethical and democratic framework within a culture that both recognizes differences and is committed to resolving its antagonism. I mean that if we talk about identity in terms of Indonesian culture, we have a difficulty because what we call as local culture, we can see is as a kind of melting pot of different cultural sources, Chinese, India, Islam, Western, etc. So the concept of different is an important concept in discussion about tolerance. And also about cultural distance. Distance, whether social, political, economical, cultural, or spiritual, is an important aspect in understanding tolerance, both in the context of pluralism and multiculturalism, particularly of what we call as a cultural distance. Cultural distance is an abstract distance, which is a particular kind of distance in the cultural relations. For example, a distance of value, a distance of belief, morality, taste, lifestyle, or meaning. If we see one particular example about cultural distance, for example, belief system, we can see that cultural distance in terms of belief, in terms of Indonesian culture, one of the main source of conflict, horizontal conflict, and also even the violence, some violence, because of cultural distance in terms of belief. I think Peter Mark know more about this concept rather than me, but I'm aware because it is really related to what we call as a distance. We can see that if we see ourselves in terms of religion, in terms of ethnic group, and etc., as the eye that inside inside a kind of container, and we see the other outside as our enemy, as our as our something that threaten us. We talk about this concept of Amweb. I think the third part of my presentation is about how the tolerant society, I mean the Indonesian society that has a basic root of a tolerant principle to be intoleranced by a kind of political power. I mean that what we call as a political over-determination, because in Indonesia, everything can be politicized. There are politics of religion, there are politics of ethnicity, there are politics of economy. All of things can be part of the politics. So political over-determination has led society move too far away from the ideal of the tolerant society. In contrast, what is structurally constructed is a kind of highly divided and intolerant society in which the frictions, contradiction, and conflicts between different religious, ethnic, and racial groups have been more and more rampant because of this part of political interest. The recent political and social tendency of strengthening of intolerance in various social relations could be seen as an indication of the society that is structurally separated from its cultural roots. Tolerance as a local knowledge and wisdom is no longer capable of organizing, controlling, and shaping the everyday life of the member of society. In fact, the Indonesian political culture basically is ideological in its character. Discussion about tolerance in Indonesia cannot be separated from discussion about political life and political culture. And Pancasila, as a national or state ideology, emphasize the communal character of Indonesian society and the basic principle. And the basic principle is harmonious life. In order to solve dispute over certain problem, there's a social mechanism that is related to and supportive for the principle of harmony, namely parli, or we call it as a permusyawaratan, a customary form of deliberation in the local democratic system. So basically, Indonesian political culture is dialogical. But because of the strong political power in terms of reformation in 1998, there has been a kind of the rise of individualism in terms of political culture and social life in Indonesia. Since 1955, Indonesia has practiced a professional multi-party and presidential system where president and vice president are elected by the parliament. However, since 2004, they are elected directly by people. The subsequent modification toward direct election has radically changed the nature of the Indonesian election itself, since the personality of the individual candidate has become more important. The personal image of the individual candidate has become the determinant factor in political contestation. Here, individualism has become the basis of socio-political culture to replace the basic principle of commonality and dialogue and gotong royong and also permusyawaratan or parli. So what happened after Reformation is, the various conflict particularly what we call as ideological conflict. In terms of politics, we call it is called ideological contestation, because we have, as I say by Herianto, we have Japanism, liberalism, Islam, Marxism, in terms of Indonesian basis of ideology. And as I said before, the basic ideology of Indonesian political culture is Pancasila, which is called as the core idea is a gotong royong or communal work. But liberalism, Marxism, Japanism also shaped the political culture of Indonesia. And we can also talk about the role of fundamentalism, antagonism in terms of political ideology. For example, what we call as fundamentalism is not only religious fundamentalism, but also economical fundamentalism. So there is a kind of contradictory thing about the basic ideas of Pancasila deliberation, but there are another ideas that develop in terms of Indonesian politics, fundamentalism and antagonism, what shaping our political culture. That what we call as the effect of this individualism in political culture is political intolerant society. I mean that we in the last decade, has seen what we call as a great divide in society that never happened before between two big groups. Nationalists, anti-nationalists, Pancasilists, anti-Pancasilists. I mean that the great divide is the main danger for what we call as a tolerant society, because the main interest is political interest here. The last part of my presentation is trying to answer how to strengthening toleration. But our problem in Indonesia is if we like to strengthening toleration, we have to change political situation in the first place. Without this political reformation, I think it's quite difficult to strengthening toleration in terms of art or art education. So I mean that, in terms of art education could be an important way in an attempt to strengthen tolerance in a more transcultural society. Culturality is a complex interconnection and intersection of different culture in a common space as a consequences of the increasing complexity in society, the network society, and that driving for social networking and the crossing between two or more cultures that creates a cultural hybrid. I mean that traditionally, Indonesian ethnic culture basically transcultural, but we have today a more complex transculturality in terms of Indonesian culture because of many influence from media, globalization, as Pak Mark has remarked before. The ability of collaboration between different disciplines to solve a certain problem is highly determined by cultural value of society. Based on this argument, it can be argued furthermore that the transcultural capacity is one of the basic capacity in the dialogue, exchange, intersection between cultures, through which a more tolerant social life could be initiated. But as I said before, it is quite difficult to strengthening toleration through art education or art practice if we can, making something like a political reformation. Political reformation is prerequisite for the proper functioning of art education in strengthening tolerance, without which it is difficult to build a tolerant society. I mean, it is particularly what we cope with what happened in Indonesian culture today. I think there has to be a kind of political reformation. I think it's not my
2 minutes
part.
more.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's not my part to talk about this political reformation, but I try to share what we can do in terms of art education. I think in terms of art and toleration, we can develop toleration at least in 3 locus, if we can call that. Toleration through art process, toleration through art event, and toleration in artwork itself. Toleration in art process, we can see that we can understand in today academic life, we have a new concept about transdisciplinarity, a new model of knowledge production. We can try to incorporate this concept in terms of art education. I mean, the spirit of tolerance could be built in the art process itself, in which various artists from different ethnic, racial background can inclusively collaborate in a certain artistic collaboration. We can, understand now about new concept of co-creation, co-creative space, etc. Secondly, toleration through art event. I can give one example how toleration can be built, can be developed through art event instead of art process itself. For example, Jember Fashion Carnival is an example of how art festival is a potential medium in constructing inclusive and tolerant society. The basic concept of pedalungan, it means that we live in mixed and inclusive culture. One of example how the ideas of toleration can be developed through various art events. The last one is toleration in artwork itself. I mean that toleration is not in the process, but the content of art itself that contains the ideas about toleration. An example is Garin Nugroho work in Mooncake Story. In this work, Garin constructed the message about tolerance in the film. The message of tolerance is represented in 2 main and opposite characters in the film, a Japanese pure and Chinese rich businessmen who are involved in various inclusive and mutual respect. So the main message of the film is the spirit of difference for sharing, as a deep message about the spirit of tolerance. And also Art Moment Jakarta 2020 also has an idea about how event can be a mediator, a connector for
Postpone. I think time is up.
Okay, so my conclusion is art and design education can also work with 3 kinds of toleration. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Professor Yasrap, for your presentation. I think a very interesting topic, but the time is up. And let me summarize a little bit. Maybe Professor Yasrap offers 3 strategies to rebuild a new construction of tolerance in contemporary information digital society, such as tolerance in art processes, tolerance through art events, tolerance in artwork. But this is a need political will and political situation. Any responses? I think time is very run, so we don't have time to give you some question. So we will continue presentation to next presenter. Thank you very much and give applause to Professor Yasrap. Presenters, participants, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to inform you that webinar production for the third ICADE led by Film and Television Study Program in the Faculty of Art and Design Education of UPI. If you are interested in this production, please contact Dr. Philosophy Yudi Sukmayadi, Vice Dean for Academic Affairs at FPSD. The distinguished speakers is Dr. Christoph Lucamsey. Because Dr. Nahon probably the last presenter, so we would like to continue Dr. Christoph in Poland. Good morning, Dr. Christoph.
Good morning. Do you hear me well?
Morning in Poland, right?
Yes, it's 10 o'clock.
Afternoon.
It's 10 o'clock.
So
Selamat
Dr. Chris,
sore.
I would like to introduce your short biography. Dr. Christoph is an assistant professor in Department of Intermedia, University of Art, Poznan, Poland, for subject intermedia activities and photography, curatorial strategies, and culture marketing. He is also researcher of cultural phenomena and curator of artistic event and unusual exhibition. It focuses on new education methodologies, including process-oriented approaches and collaboration between creators, new method of artistic education, the psychology of the reception of arts, design, communication, and the mobility of artists. He is a creator for photography, video works, art book designer, and event scenarios. Author of text contextualizing the practices of contemporary art, co-founder of the Upside Art Foundation and Intermedia Department Foundation. Now we would like to invite Dr. Christoph Lucamsey to present the paper with the title, Think We Do Together in Education Visual Communication, Changing Others into Ourselves, Facing the Challenge in the World After Pandemics. Time is yours, Dr. Christoph.
Selamat sore. Can you hear me well? Just checking. Thank you.
Selamat sore.
Selamat sore. Thank you very much for inviting me to this great conference of ICAT, and thank you again to the whole committee of UP. I visited the university this year before pandemics. I'm very happy to come back. I'm one of the fresh people here, so it will be very great to share some experiences from art education and design education point of view. I'll be sharing screen. Please let me try and let's see whether we can see it. So I would like to ask to allow me to share the screen. I might have the same problem as Professor Park. I don't know if this is the same because in my sharing screen options, I don't have my own desktop at the moment.
Oh yeah, please share screen.
Yes. Do you see the screen of mine at the moment, please?
Yeah, but still a blank screen.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
because
we didn't see your writing.
It is a blank screen.
Yes, because in the sharing options, I only have the only possibility of sharing is the whiteboard instead of files on my desktop. So I would like to ask for this advanced option, right? So you have to allow me in Zoom to share my own desktop. I think it might be the same problem as Professor Park had before. So I still cannot share the screen. I don't know, are we there with advanced options? Because once again, for Zoom meeting, you need to allow me as organizers to share the screen from my desktop. Thank you.
Please open your PPT first and then share screen.
Yes, 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 I have it. Now you should see it at the moment.
It's done that.
Do you see the screen?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So we can start with, thanks. We can start with certain notice. I come from the art world as it was previously announced. So I wanted to focus on what is the image of the art world we had before pandemics and also towards the art education that we created to understand this art world. This is a meme that we all recognize what it means. In the art world of nowadays, in the visual art world, we created a certain mechanism called, in short, the critical discourse. So if someone puts glasses on the floor in the White Cube Gallery, that is seen as the main environment for contemporary art, we are actually asking ourselves a question whether there is art or not. And if the art is maybe market-oriented only and goes towards these conclusions and mechanisms that come from capitalism and market-oriented reality, is actually shown in this famous GIF. So I think we might understand what that really means. the art market has created a certain way of thinking that successful artist is only the one that is actually a person who is also monetarily successful. And the White Cube galleries, that is a phenomenon of the 90s, actually, of 20th century, has also introduced this kind of feeling that art must be presented in a certain design way and only this way. So when we see the difference between very well designed exhibition in a White Cube, and then we see this sort of example, we start to question whether this is fair enough and well designed enough to become art. So I'm actually asking myself a question nowadays: what is public art at the moment, and whether this example of Doug Atkins' work, a video artist from United States that is shown consecutively for certain days and nights, is also a question to ask ourselves in the art world: how can we make art more public? And what are the tools to make it more public? So what I also observe as a researcher from Critical Discourse that is designed for us as viewers of art inside White Cubes, we go more and more to relational art and art seen as a tool for society to change certain manners, certain mechanisms that the culture, visual culture, has somehow accustomed us to. This is an example of a work by Polish artist Paweł Althammer, who asked his neighbors in his local Warsaw environment and blocks of flats to make this light installation with the number 2000 for the forthcoming year. And of course, what is invisible in this artwork is all this process and effort that was actually made to perceive this possibility. He also changed his neighbors and dressed them in golden costumes to say that they're also equally important as himself as an artist, while Poland somehow celebrated the EU joining in the year 2005. The interest of mine also goes to something called widely as social art, but it's of course a difficult definition. So I refer here to this artist and designer, Tister Gates, who together with his fellows in teams co-works on the idea of a community as actually creators community and redesigning old houses, inhabiting houses, and staying together as long as possible with different skills and competences. That is something that leads my own research to understanding what a contemporary art is, using social tools and ability to unite people in different actions and processes, including singing, including staying together in certain ways. So we move from performance to performativity as a tool, and I also use in my practice, educational practice, performativity as a tool. So it's not only a performance that's dedicated to viewers, but it's the whole manner of being performative in certain environment and certain conditions. The artwork designed for us something that is a very difficult meta language to understand art. So quite often people who are not from the art world, they think that must understand art. And because of that, we created and very well designed this language that actually lets us to be quite distant from art. And this is a revelation that I personally love. This boards in an art gallery that myself I used to design for years, also as curator of art exhibitions. Tilda Swinton, Scottish born in the year 60, there may be living artist, glass, steel, mattress, pillow, linen, water, and spectacles. And she is the courtesy of the artist. And she is literally living inside the gallery in an aquarium, doing her performance while people talk about it. So that's a crucial point for myself in understanding the difference from performance in 70s kind of concept of art, from modern art to contemporary performativity, including all the things that are used by, for example, this kind of performances in completely out of the art world, like a Toshiba commercial. And what I'm thinking also about performativity is how we shape the spectacle. It's no longer viewers only in art galleries, but it's participants. Participants watching performance and trying to adopt themselves into new situation where performers are using the space or going from one space to another, following certain artist concepts. And nowadays in pandemic times, how we reshape certain ways of seeing, for example, cinema or video art. And of course, interactivity that goes with an idea like this example, when we call this number, something happens on the screen. For many years, I've been using a teamwork that I somehow defined as a tool for art education. So it's using different competences and skills of people, including students, other teachers, to design a change of certain problem in locality or globally. So we have a program in Poland called Open Art School, when we, for example, research the inability to use the local river in one of the cities. And we do it together by going ship by ship and walking the distance along the rivers, together with a group of people who are both from the art school as well as design school as well, completely out of the art society. We go to places like the borderland of Poland, Germany, and Czech Republic, where we perform certain workshops with people of very different origins and very different ethnicities from Greece, Denmark, Spain, Germany, Poland, Lithuania, Ukraine, and many other countries, where we talk about the idea of what is the borderland and what is the European flag, what is behind this flag. We described before certain ways of symbolic ways of representing certain identity, national identity. I think this has become a very important problem nowadays. So this is a performativity that happens at the borderland. It's one of my main interests, and working with different teams of students and teachers and designers and artists. We work around these issues together by certainly spending a lot of time in local contexts, by cooking together, by talking about it, by walking together. And also that implies certain ways of thinking about art events that were mentioned before. So thinking about tolerance in art event and in art practice and in art education, I'm very open to the viewers who are not really skilled in art education, who are not coming from the art background, and the ways, for example, while we in our teams pursue the guest welcome, is how to change the language, because many people who come to art exhibitions are not skilled with the language that art world uses for many years. So it's important how we make these encounters happening in different ways, so people don't have this impression that they don't understand what is shown or what is presented. And of course, it goes together with teamworks in many different places, such as borders of Poland, Belarus, and Lithuania, as you see in different season, working with different religions and cultural aspects, such as Orthodox Church and Islam in Little Tatar community in the east of Poland, including one of the contemporary curators from Indonesia here on the photo. And many, many other occasions, because I don't have enough time to talk about all these issues, but occasions that kind of solve a certain problem, certain issue that is coming from intolerance that was mentioned before, or not well understood pluralism, while maintaining certain community and local context. By teamwork, I also mean creating friendships that will last much longer than the so-called art project itself. So there are all the issues in art and design education dedicated to staying together and maintaining certain group of people in actions. Doesn't matter if it's related to typography in design education or a purely art, as here invited to Kathmandu Triennale in Nepal in 2017, we formed a group of different educators, artists, young designers, to work with local community of Patan as a district of Kathmandu. After a very serious, as all of you probably know and remember, very serious earthquake that happened there 2 years before we came. So there was very important issue how we can communicate within completely different groups of people, and how we can share knowledge, share certain dedications. Like the exhibition that we did was not really an exhibition of our individual works presented here on the photo, but it was an exhibition of the works of the local community who is dedicated to sculpture. So the exhibition itself was screenings and what these people who are part of this community did instead of individual works of us as guests. And that was a very crucial moment when, after days, because we spent there 1.5 months, after days of education, understanding each other better and better, we also invited people from this big event called Triennale of Art of Kathmandu to meet our community and how people, it was very fragile and unique moment, how people met, people from completely different groups, completely different backgrounds, and completely different languages, as I mentioned also before that. I find it important to change and renegotiate the language we use in contemporary art, how they met together in one place, and how it caused a lot of unique situations. So these are certain examples, also using certain context and difficult constructs such as Euro-Asia and 19th century construct of combining what is Europe and Asia in cultural sense. We followed a way to Switzerland from Poland by going with this group of people, artists and designers and performers, together to Zurich, where we were invited to make an exhibition, but everything that was presented on this exhibition was made on the way. So for a week of this journey. So journey somehow became a very interesting tool for art and design, including photography making, performance making, and discussions. And that was a dance performance in a Valhalla building in Germany, in Bavaria, sleeping together, cooking together, staying together, and discussing things that were later presented in official public event of the Zurich University of Arts. So this is one of the methods that I call teamwork. This is also interesting in terms of renegotiating diversity and ethnicities. This is a so-called mobile residency we created in Siberia, Russia, where we took the famous Trans-Siberian train. We were offered a support from many, many different people, mostly private support and people-to-people support. And we were able to do this great journey to a small island, Olkon, on the Baikal Lake, where we of course met different people of different origins, Buryati people and Slavic people and Yakuti people. And the journey itself became a tool somehow and a methodology to talk about how this teamwork can then react on certain ways of understanding, as we call it in our conference, tolerance, but also acceptance of diversity. So these are some photos from the Siberian train issue, one of the most important journeys we did as a team, including all these circumstances that were new and very much not like the art world is used to. So I don't want it to become a touristic souvenir now in my presentation, so I'll skip it and go to the next. One of my main interests recently and before pandemic hit us, we were working for 6 years in Polish-Indonesian collaboration in culture and visual culture. That is the image I always remember when I first came 6 years ago to Indonesia, that I had to completely change my own attitude towards certain factors or values that in so-called European society make the most important issue, which is time. And time, of course, has become something that I had to renegotiate with myself and with the whole team. What I wanted to show you is that we started from street artists from Serum community that is now quite, of course, famous and well known because of being part of Good School in Jakarta, but they were different communities we started to become friends with when this journey in Indonesia started.
We have another slide.
Thank you. I have something like 5 minutes, I guess. So I just wanted to show you how we developed this 6 years project from being supported by institutions and our schools until becoming somehow a family of friends and a team that works together on strengthening not only tolerance, but also cultural diversity and mutual understanding, accepting, for example, certain methods that we learned in Indonesia, such as nongkrong methods, for example, that I widely use in my own practice as educator in institutional education here in Poland or also working abroad. So many, many years of collaboration and many years of mutual understanding with all the references. I don't have to refer anymore to non-cronk methods, but I think that's some of the most important methods I learned as a teacher in Indonesia. And that led us, of course, to follow this collaboration between Poland and Indonesia on different levels that ended up, for example, like here on this event while we cooked Indonesian food together at the School of Forum at the University of Design in Warsaw nowadays. So there are many, many references, including being in impossible missions and finding unique contexts that you can place in between art and education somehow, like the Raden Saleh Mosque in Germany nearby Dresden, in a small place called Maxen, where our team, including artists and practitioners from Indonesia, Poland, and Germany, paid respect to this Raden Saleh building and somehow maintained it and performed a unique commemoration and deciding to clean the garden around the mosque. It was one of the most unique and unusual stories that we put ourselves to. And of course, Jatiwangi Art Factory, which is nearby where you are at the moment in Bandung, that I observe and experiment with the collective that was founded by Arif Yudi, that you might know, and the whole 6 years of collaboration, including art education and design education, including being between institutional practices and completely unique practices, such as creating the model of sabun tanah, as you all recognize, the soap that cleans, and it's clay-based, university challenges, collection of different events that are very hard to define in short. For example, Indonesian people from West Java and different islands actually singing Jatiwangi Anthem in front of Polish Presidential Palace in Warsaw in the year 2015, with a remarkable poster by Solidarity Movement, and many, many, many other situations that are really hard for me to describe. And
Dr. Christoph,
yes,
we have 5 minutes more.
Thank you.
For your presentation.
I'm jumping, as you see, from images to image, and I'll be very happy to be able to talk about it later also, because this is a long process, and as I was introduced that it's process-based art education, there's of course not a chance to speak about it within a couple of phrases only. But as you see, even from these images, this was a long 6 years perpetuum, I would say, that led us to certain changes in our approaches. So from exotizing foreigners coming to a small village in Indonesia, we became partners and friends, and we collaborate on various levels nowadays that are very much precisely what I believe art and art education needs nowadays. So this close, less academic approach, but close, very direct relations, and not being afraid to do things that are understood as being beyond the art world practice. Like architecture of the house made of clay that is actually in this place by one of the most famous Polish architects, and the house that is still used in Jatiwangi Art Factory, and many, many, many other examples that I don't have time to follow, including the exhibition at National Gallery Jakarta, and inviting the team of experts, designers and non-experts, and creating very motivational events and activities within social design, referring to history also of Indonesia, working here with LBH Jakarta community, for example, or creating Indonesian students from different art and design schools, a group of, or an academy that was actually bringing Polish history and Polish contemporary art into the minds of Indonesian visitors by talking about it in Indonesian language, and making this group the main guard of the whole exhibition. And the concept, inviting Pengamen musicians inside the National Gallery and singing songs together inside, that, as far as I know, was the first time it ever happened. So many, I would say, social design methodologies that of course need more explanation are beyond us. And since we are working for 6 years and I still know that I have 3 more minutes maximum. And we introduce, for example, Gotong Royong methodologies in contemporary context of Europe in an exhibition in Warsaw, where we also research how it is Gotong Royong now and how can be easily understandable by other people, other groups of people, and in different contexts, in different geographies, especially by means of contemporary design and art. It was broken by the pandemics. So I move towards this, what I also wanted to emphasize. So all these experiences we had for 6 years doing this collaboration are now no longer possible because, as myself, I cannot even fly to Indonesia at the moment. And here are the last photos from where we met at the UP in February this year. I started to also ask ourselves, where are we? Because of course, online education is dominating the way we perform in online education, the way we re-perform when we decide not to use our faces anymore, but become these big letters, and how we are actually very well equipped with what television proposed for us, and something Neil Postman used to call technopoly, which is a state of culture and also a state of mind, where we actually are more dedicated to technology, and we seek our, as culture, our authorization in technology and satisfaction, and we take orders from technology. So I'm also going to the end. I'm getting to the final.
Thank you. Your presentation is the end.
All right.
Because we only one slide.
Okay. So here is the statement that I'd like to maybe finish with. The word is, yes?
Presentation. We would like to have another presentation, Professor Nahon, and I do apologize for participant because we should extend our time for the other presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Christoph, we look forward to seeing you in Indonesia.
Very soon, I hope. Thank you. Terima kasih.
Thank you.
Okay. So
please stop screen.
Yep.
Stop screen.
So I'm ready to go. It's okay.
We invite Professor Nahon. Let your paper.
Yeah, already I made it. It's working, right? Okay, thank you. So
we are sorry, we have to. Time is limited. We have to 20 minutes for you for presentation. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so guys, I'm sorry since I made a mistake. That's why I'm going to finish earlier than I thought I planned. Sorry for that. So these days really not easy to live, because of COVID-19 and because of viruses and because of crazy drivers around my neighborhood as well. Okay, anyway, let's get started. I have no time. Okay, so first of all, thanks for inviting me. Okay, and second one is the name of my presentation is The Path for the Performing Arts of the Era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and Post-Coronavirus Era, which is related to Zoom generation, right? Okay, so there are some index. First of all, I don't have to introduce myself anymore, okay? There are, actually my presentation is motivated 2 columns, right? And then the other one is how to get over the COVID-19 and aura of Walter Benjamin and temporality, immediacy, and then next one is site-specific performance and technology, coexistence, and Zoom performance, augmented reality by Jill Jobin, who is from Swiss artist, VR artist, and Destiny of Art. these are keywords of my presentation, okay? And then, so 2 columns. Like I said before, my presentation was motivated 2 different kind of columns. One of them is, what does artists have to prepare in the post-coronavirus era? By Nam Jong-suk, who is Korean, the art management, the people person. And second one is by Professor Jo Una. These days, the online content is really tough, not easy to immerse online performance at least 20 minutes more. So there are 2 dilemmas: how to get over, how to make the performance, how to make the show must go on in the pandemic, in the post-coronavirus era. Dilemmas, right? Okay. And right. How to get over, prevail over the COVID-19. As you can see, do you know that this is president of the UK, right? United Kingdom. And he is the below people is a kind of Congress person. They are fighting each other, confronting each other. It means the performing arts in the theater is dangerous or not. So according to Congressman's opinion, annual how can I say, the audience, the number of the performance is more than Premier League fans. You know, the number of the audience is 34 millions. You know, that's why according to Congressperson's opinion, it can't stop performing world. So we need to keep going. We can't close the door of theater, right? So, and then, but there are dilemmas. That's why 2 dilemmas. We have to persistent, or we have to accept it, which means we need to accept the digital technology world, you know, or we want to keep doing the performing work instead of very dangerous the infection, and we have to choose the technology, the performing world. 2 dilemmas, right? Here are the meaningful cases. Let me introduce. Right? Site-specific performance. It is kind of related to the Dr. Chris, because of site-specific performance. Performance is basically based on the performativity, right? So basically, site-specific performance and performativity is composed of the audience and the public and how can I say, and contact. There are 3 materials very important in the performativity, as far as I know. So you guys can see this video, right? See that? So this performance is definitely in a kind of site-space performance, right? It means this place, the Copenhagen in Denmark, because of the director is my friend, the friend of mine. He made this piece, right? You can see, yeah, right? And then the join, the participate, the performance together. You know, it's totally performativity. Take part in audience, take part in the performance as well, right? So for those of you who would like to check this video after the presentation, I'm going to upload this video, right? This is kind of technology, I think. To make a fantasy or something else. Something like that. Okay, anyway. So it means this piece basically made out of weak technology. It means the headset or making some kind of imagination as well, right? After that, the next one is I totally strongly recommend this piece. This piece is, you can find the YouTube link. This is made, it's definitely Zoom performance. There are 9 performers, but they don't have to meet each other. Totally, this piece made out of technology, right? Can you check this one? Oh. Advertisement. Sorry, advertisement. Oh my God. Oh. Okay, here we go. It's a very short piece. This made out of, totally made out of technology. Zoom video. I think this is a beautiful piece, I think.
Open YouTube link.
Okay, and then can I go back to? Yeah. Can I come back?
Keep going
okay.
to present your speech.
Yes, Gary. How can I come back? Go back. Where is my? Nice. Sorry for that.
Stop screen first.
Yeah, could you open? Yeah, could you open
YouTube and share screen again.
Oh my gosh. Okay, do you hear me anyway? Okay, can you hear me? So it's not easy to make my presentation. That's from now on, I'm going to make the just voice. Is it okay?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So anyway, okay. So okay, Ja, did you hear me? Okay, you can see. Okay.
Can see you.
Yeah. And you can see now. You hear me? Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
this, okay, but I didn't see your PPT.
Oh, really? Anyway, after that, do you hear me right now? Okay. So
yes, I can see you.
Yeah. Okay. This piece is augmented AR video from Jill Jobeng, who is from Swiss artist. He is very famous, and I think this piece is very meaningful piece in terms of the over the site specific performance and the over the spreading the boundary about our performance. So after that, for those of you who would like to check this video, I'm going to upload later on. Okay, later. And next one is, and so going back. So I would like to say about the destiny of art. How to get over this pandemic and how to make the show must go on. What do you think? It is really not easy, right? And we have to accept or we have to avoid. It means we have to accept the technology world while we have to persistent performing art. They are the meaningful the dilemma for us, I think, right? So can you hear me, Juju? Hello, Juju, you hear me?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. So that's why I would like to say about this sentence. Actually, the history of art is, in a way, it has been endlessly experimental working. You know, it's kind of challenging. That's why I would like to say about the point. The point is we had to approach this pandemic issue You know, as you know, Marcel Duchamp and John Cage, you guys know that it's so beautiful and so famous artist. You know, according to the John Cage, the name of the piece is 4 minutes 33 seconds. I think it seems like John Cage, he wanted to make the spread the boundary of the art. You know, when the pianist appear on the stage, and then after that, the pianist, they didn't play anything. After that, audience suddenly make a whispering, you know. So I think the John Cage would like to make the, how can I say, the boundary of the art. Even he would like to make the include the noise or something else, whispering can make. He would like to include that kind of things can be music. So the point, my point is, the conclusion is, the life of history is, you know, history of our life is the series of the struggling, series of challenging, series of the experimental work. That's why in that regard, we need to approach, it is not matter of persistence or acceptance. The most important thing is the history of art is series of struggling or experimental working. In that regard, we have to approach with what? Let me say.
Thank you. We got it.
Okay.
We
so
got
anyway,
it, Professor Nahon. So
in that regard, the show must go on.
we have to struggle, right?
Okay, got it. So the last sentence. That's why show must go on in some way, in diverse ways. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. We are sorry to stop it because the time is running up. So we would like to thank you, Professor Nahon from Korea. And we have to move the other next presentation. So we would like to thank you, presenters, especially for our distinguished speaker, Professor Dietermark from Germany, Professor Nahon Park from South Korea, Professor Dr. Yasrap Amir Pillian from Indonesia, and Dr. Christoph Lucamsey from Poland. They are already delivered thoughtful presentation, and we would like to thank you in advance and appreciate their presentation. We hopefully in this pandemic situation, we are healthy, peaceful, and maintain our tolerance, continue by staying connected online and by imaging the life. We have to struggle in this situation. Thank you, and I'm Juju Masuna, get permission to lead the meeting, and our distinguished speakers also can lead this meeting. We will see you again next IKADE in 2021. So bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Ya, baik Bapak Ibu semua, kembali lagi kepada saya Saprudin, mohon izin saya memperkenalkan diri. Saya sebagai sekretaris sebetulnya di penyelenggaraan IKADE ini, dan saya yang sering berkomunikasi melalui WA Group. Jadi mohon maaf dari saya sendiri sekarang, mumpung ada waktunya, bisa memohon maaf apabila ada hal-hal ketika komunikasi kita ada kurang yang berkenan. Baik Bapak Ibu, sebelum kita beralih ke break room, jadi nanti ada notifikasi di semua media Bapak Ibu semua, tinggal klik join saja, nanti kita akan open, setelah itu baru Bapak Ibu bisa bergabung di room masing-masing. Dan kemudian setelah itu, kami dari pihak panitia sepenuhnya akan menyerahkan kepada moderator, sehingga nanti ketika di break room itu sudah selesai semua presentasi, kemudian diskusi juga setelah selesai, itu moderator berkuasa penuh untuk menutup acara. Kami dari panitia inti, dari main room, sekali lagi mengucapkan banyak terima kasih atas partisipasi Bapak Ibu semua. Mohon maaf apabila ada hal-hal yang kurang berkenan. Komunikasi masih kita terus bisa berjalan melalui WA Group. Ada beberapa hal mungkin nanti ada proses-proses seperti sertifikat dan sebagainya. Baik, sekali lagi kami ucapkan terima kasih dan mohon maaf apabila ada hal-hal yang kurang berkenan. Saya persilakan ke moderator di setiap room masing-masing. Silakan Bapak Ibu semua.
The second International Conference on Art and Design Education is officially open.
Foto bersama.
The second International Conference on Art and Design Education is officially open.
ngobrol, hey, halo. Foto. Halo. Yanti, halo. Pak Budi, halo Pak Budi. Budia, halo Budia. Budia, halo.
Hello.
Ya, ngobrol. Sambil menunggu di depan. Halo. Dadah. Daripada sepi ngobrol saja lah. Masing-masing. Halo anak-anakku. Halo.
Halo, Pak Ded. Halo. Halo. Jom pernah kawan.